too hard. The utilitarian convinced me that I have non-independent, subjective reasons to believe in utilitarianism, and I'll give you the debate, Sinthe. If you can, like, genuinely, if you can give me non-moral fact reasons that the utilitarian case is convincing, I'll let you win. Like, I just think that there are no objective moral reasons to believe in utilitarianism, and any intuition-based case for utilitarianism fails. And so you have great reasons not to be a utilitarian. That's it. That's all I've got.
Yeah, so my argument is just that if realism is correct, then utilitarianism is correct on realism. If realism is not correct, then utilitarianism is correct on several non-realist views, such as, for example, some kind of subjectivist view. Because I personally prefer it, right? That would be sufficient there to prove that I prefer it. Now, maybe you can say something like, you don't prefer it or something, but that's not the claim I'm making. I'm making the claim that you do, in fact, prefer utilitarianism. Also, if realism is true, then utilitarianism is going to be true on that lens as well. No other moral theory is going to have as strong evidence for it on realism as utilitarianism does. So I don't know if we can go down either line, go down the if P then util, or if not P then util. Obviously,
we'll start the 30 minutes discussion now.
No, yeah, you've put us in an interesting situation, right? Because I mean, obviously, I contend with either way you formulate it, right? So it's like, oh, if moral realism is true, I would need a reason to accept utilitarianism over anything else. And if moral realism isn't true, because you said, oh, what was it exactly? You said, you have reason to, but I don't.
Well, no, I didn't say that I have reason to, but you don't. I just, like, all I would mean by reason, if we take some anti-realist view of reason, all I would mean is what I prefer.
Okay.
That's all I'd be meaning by that, is what I prefer.
I mean, yeah, I think it is possible that Sinthe, Discord debater, prefers utilitarianism. Yeah. That doesn't give me, like, the ambiguous position is utilitarianism true? I have no reason to believe in utilitarianism. Short of justification, utilitarianism is false,
What do you mean by reason?
Justification.
Yeah, by justification you mean something, I'm guessing?
I'm bored. You're already boring me. I'm not going to be gay with you, Sinthe. I'm not doing it.
I just need to figure out what you mean by justification. Do you mean your stances? Or if all you're saying is you don't
justification
like
is reason to believe that justification is reason to believe that it's true, right? So your position, obviously, if what you're cashing, no, because obviously I agree. In the position where you're cashing out reason to believe in utilitarianism is as in reason to prefer utilitarianism, and then in the absence of that reason, then yeah, you wouldn't. In the absence of a reason to think that utilitarian prescriptions best represent your beliefs, then you would have no reason to be a utilitarian. Yes.
Sorry, by reason you mean what exactly? Justification, you said?
In this case, because it's not reason to believe that it's true, but rather facts about utilitarianism that make it as such that they best represent your preferences.
Well, obviously utilitarianism does best represent my preferences. Is that in dispute?
Not that they best represent your preferences, that anybody, or especially me, has any reason to accept it. I accept that like a retard.
My preferences.
Oh my God.
I'm confused.
You're talking when I'm talking.
Yes.
Okay. I accept that a retard as a reason to believe that the Bing Bongalese need control of the earth, right? I accept that. Of course I accept that, right? But I have no reason to accept that utilitarianism has any validity. So if you say that you are a retard that thinks the Bing Bongalese need to control the earth,
like utilitarianism,
I'll end the debate right now. If all that your position is...
The debate's not over. I'll
end the debate. In fact, say it right now. I will concede on the spot. If your entire position... I'll concede that you can go to the finals, Sinthe. If your position
my view
is out... Dude, let me finish. Mm-hmm. If your position cashes out as identical to that the Bing Bongalese deserve the entire earth because it's preferable to you, I will concede right now. Enjoy the finals. I'll do it right now. No one here, 28 viewers, they'll be the viewers. I will concede and I won't have a single contest. If that's all it cashes out as, I'll concede right now.
No, I'm telling you that's not my view. It's not all it cashes out as. But that might be funny.
You heard that,
I'm not
right?
saying it's...
That's not the
Hold on.
Fantastic.
My view is not it doesn't cash out as the same as this Bing Bongalese thing. I don't know what that means. Right? So I'm telling you, my view is... Okay. I'm telling you that my view is just that either it's the case that realism is true and utilitarianism is true on realism, or it's the case that utilitarianism best matches my preferences. Utilitarianism does best match my preferences. You can maybe make the argument it doesn't. I don't know what the Bing Bongalese
I mean, okay, so I do think...
Now, otherwise, you can say, like, you think realism is true, and I'll just grant it for the sake of the argument. Then we can move, because I'm not going to dispute that. I'm a realist.
Okay. So
we can argue why utilitarianism is true on realism.
So I'll have a question for you, because I don't really want to go B, because B, 9 times out of 10, will be boring. But would you prefer an innocent person suffer, or a guilty person suffer?
That depends on the context.
Okay, yeah, you're going to give... Okay, then there's no reason to follow this line of questioning. If it's in a vacuum, if you're truly neutral on it, and obviously I would never believe you, but if it were true in your heart of hearts, and I can't prove that it's not, it won't be interesting, right?
Well, yeah, I am neutral. I don't believe in desserts. Like
So,
I have
okay,
a
yeah.
disposition. I have a disposition about believing in desserts.
Great. Well, then I obviously want us to have a debate.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I
I'll
don't
take
like. I'm telling you, I don't feel more bad when an innocent person suffers.
Yeah, I
but that
believe you.
person
I'm
suffers, they don't make me feel
not
bad.
going to go host Synth.
Yeah.
I don't trust that you have a preference. I don't care, dude. I would be
I
bored
think
doing
it'd be
it.
fine to make that argument if you wanted to.
I don't want to.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah, I
the
don't
Lord
know.
in heaven. All right,
can
so
make
we
an
go on to the
argument you
next thing. Genuinely, out of the curiosity of having a debate, because
Mhm.
I'm already feeling pretty bored. So, out
This is the
of
most
the
bored
interest of
guy of
having a
all time.
debate, pardon?
I said you're the most bored guy of all time.
No, yeah, potentially. At this point, it might be true. But yeah, so out of the interest, if we were to do this fun little, moral realism is true, and if moral realism is true, utilitarianism is true, genuinely just to give you all of the gifts in the world. Let's do it, man. I want to have the debate.
You can do either.
Make your
I
case.
don't think that's you giving me a gift. I think that's
Well,
you
no, wait,
picking one of the two lines of the argument that you could possibly go down. Like the other one is just like you arguing that the claims not true subjectivism, which is like you could do that, I guess.
The proposition.
Out for you even, but
the proposition.
go ahead.
That,
I didn't know you weren't done talking. I thought you were done.
I want to respond one
Go
day.
ahead.
The
Respond to
proposition
what?
is that
I didn't say anything.
the proposition is that the utilitarian claim is true.
Mhm.
I could be the most annoying person in the world and say and make the whole debate moral realism skepticism and make you fight like a really uphill battle.
You don't
because
look, no, that's not an argument you can make. Because you could, if I say if P or not P, then Q, you yelling no, but not P, not P. That's not gonna do anything. Right? You have to.
Is true. Do you
yes,
disagree?
Yes.
Yeah,
The argument is if P then Q, if not P then Q. Therefore, if P or not P then Q, therefore Q.
Yeah. Okay. Standard. What's it called? What's the razor called? Occam's. Yeah, Occam's razor's on my side, right?
Who are you asking? Who's that in the background?
I'm not in my house. I'm at my friend Liam's house. Liam, say hi.
Hello. I was hoping this debate.
He said he was hoping this debate would be better, so pick up your shit. Anyway, so Occam's razor is automatically on my side. Occam's razor is automatically on my side. You're asking me. The question is utilitarian. The claims a utilitarian makes is true, or utilitarianism's claims are true. I'm offering you moral realism as a freebie, as a gift,
Is that a
out of
freebie?
interest. Out of the interest.
Reg, you're not tracking. You're just spazzing out. Look, you've talked so fucking much, but you've said so little. How do you do this? Reg, you've talked so much. You've said so little. So I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. You don't have to grant either, right? You say, just for the sake of the argument, I'll grant P. Like, it doesn't matter. Either way, the argument still works. You have to, like, either contest that if P, then Q, or contest that if not P, then Q.
What's P? What's Q?
P is moral realism. Q is utilitarianism.
Okay, sure. If moral realism, then utilitarianism. If not moral realism, then utilitarianism. That's your position, right?
Yep.
Okay. I have no reason to believe that either of those things are true.
Okay. Which one do you think you'll have an easier time arguing against? We can go down that line.
This is like genuinely, I actually respect you for this because you're trying to do what I'm doing, in which gain the advantage from putting it in your hands. Whichever case you think you can make stronger. Because I'm willing. Okay. I'm willing to argue that if moral realism is true, utilitarianism is true. I'm willing to argue
we could just do that
if moral realism is false, then we have best reasons to believe in utilitarianism.
Hurry up, please. Look, you're gonna run the timer out. You're gonna run out the clock.
You're right.
Take the shot. Take the shot.
You're arguing, and
fine. Fuck it. We'll do the moral realism one because it's more fun. So look, the other one's just obvious, right? Obviously, if anti-realism is true, then I prefer utilitarianism. You already granted that.
No,
right?
Not you.
But like, if we can do the moral realism one because that's fun too. So if moral realism is true, utilitarianism is true because every other alternative is something that's less sensible. And intuition pumps are not going to be the kind of thing that's going to bear that strong of evidence in like a realist domain. Because obviously you wouldn't be like, well, my intuition says that quarks aren't real. Or my intuition says that quarks work this different way. That wouldn't be very strong. Obviously, we expect that sometimes in any kind of like real domain, you're going to have periods that don't track your intuition, and things might generally track your intuition. That's what we expect to see.
Yep.
Yeah. So like unintuitive cases for utilitarianism that are rare aren't going to be that strong against utilitarianism. They're not going to be that compelling. So what you're going to do is either show there's a general tendency against it, or show there's some other kind of virtue that you think utilitarianism fails on realism.
I would agree that rare unintuitive cases and like bizarre ones, with spaghetti monster, like ridiculous utility monsters that are hard to conceptualize. Yeah, of course, you would think that those are beyond the limits of our intuition, right? However, very, very grounded. If we value intuition as a way to uncover moral truths, then very simple situations, as in our intuition that innocent people suffering is worse than guilty people suffering, I have no reason to distinguish between that and my preference against suffering.
Why do you think that would track with any kind of real moral account? Like, do you think that the moral
Why-
facts do you think the stance-dependent reasons are causal or non-causal?
Why would I think that my moral preference against suffering
Please answer my
relates to
question. You
moral
talked
fact?
so much. You can
Yeah,
answer a
okay,
question.
yeah. My answer is in the same way that I think that my moral preference against suffering relates to moral facts.
Sorry, was that a yes or a no? How does that answer my question?
Yeah, your question started with the word why, so it's going to be tough to say yes or no to the question of why.
What do you think the question was?
I'm under the influence of alcohol. I hate to admit it, so in front of the judges, but just ask the question again if that's what you want to do.
Okay. Look, I'm trying to figure out why the fuck you would possibly think that your intuitions are going to track with the moral facts. And the question I asked you was yes or no. The question I asked you was, do you think that the moral facts are causal? Yes or no?
The moral facts cause my beliefs about moral facts.
Do you think the moral facts cause your beliefs about moral facts?
Yes. Do the moral facts of the world cause my beliefs about moral facts? Is that what you're asking me?
I'm asking
Okay,
you, are they causal
Fantastic.
at all?
Oh, say if I were to, by the way, if I were to grant you moral facts exist, we access moral facts by intuition. I'll grant this for you again.
I don't grant that. I don't grant any of that. I don't grant that we access them by intuition.
Oh, then how do we grant them?
I don't think that wait, hold on. Do you think the only way you can ground something is by intuition?
No. Any way that you grant them,
I would say we ground them through first-hand experience.
Any way you grant them, other than like first principle utilitarianism is true. Because I would be funny if I said, oh, any way you grant them, and you said, oh, I grant them by utilitarianism is true. I would lose the debate, right? That'd be funny. It would be
you
genius.
Would lose the debate if I said that.
Well, yeah, if I said any way you grant them, and then you said this is the way I grant them,
you wouldn't have a response if I said that. If I was just premise one, utilitarianism is true.
No, but if I say any way I said any way you grant,
I've lost the debate. It's over for me.
Liam, I mean not Liam, Sinthe. If I said any way you grant X is fine, and you said I grant X by this, then that would be fine by definition, and then you would win, right?
That's just no. I don't think I would win under that account. That's just obviously not interpreting what you mean reasonably.
That would have been boring as well. And my friend, he is watching me, so I am with my friends. They don't want to see me do a bad job, right? So anyway, I'm presenting you the opportunity to whatever I've given you. Moral realism is true. However,
you've given me that. What?
However you access moral facts. If it's not intuition, what is it?
No, I said first-hand experience. So like when you have when you have a good experience or a bad experience firsthand. You know there's a good aspect or a bad aspect to it. Right, the good aspect or bad aspect I'm talking about.
I'm sorry, I've lost you.
I've
lost you.
Hold on, we'll watch.
I know what I have.
Look, I'll catch you up. and you won't have lost me anymore.
Thank you so much, my love.
Yeah, you'll get.
Thank you. Sorry.
I got you, bestie. So look, when you experience suffering and you experience pleasure, you know the difference between those two experiences, right?
I know which one is more preferable. Yeah, I know which one is more preferable.
Not you know which one's more preferable, but you know the difference.
Well, yeah, 100%. I know the difference too.
Yeah, and you could know that like even if you were some kinds of entity that didn't have preferences, but they still had first-hand experiences, you'd know the difference still.
I would know that there were property differences between the things that would cause Xavier to suffer and Xavier to love it.
No. Not the things that cause you these things, but you would know the difference between the feeling of pleasure and the feeling of suffering.
If there were property differences, I would have the ability to distinguish between them. Potentially, yes.
You would have the ability to distinguish between the property differences of the qualia we're talking about here, right? You understand?
If there were property differences, I may have the ability to distinguish, yes.
Okay, so you'd be able to distinguish pleasure from suffering even if you didn't have preferences, right?
It depends how you define pleasure and suffering.
I'm just talking about like so I'm going to define it ostensibly, right? You felt suffering and you felt pleasure, right?
No, this is the issue because when I define pleasure, I usually, and I take a common utilitarian stance here. I'm answering it. I take a common utilitarian stance here as in pleasure. Pleasure is preferable emotional states and pain is unpreferable emotional states. And so it would be difficult for an individual with no preferences. In fact, impossible for an individual with no preferences to distinguish between them by definition.
Yeah, so the answer to my question was a yes or a no?
Then the answer is no.
Okay, the answer to my question is no?
If we define pleasure and pain as in pleasurable and unpreferable emotional states, an individual with no preferences would not be able to distinguish them. Okay, tell me what
by preferable, you mean like ones that are preferred, right?
By me, as in by the agent categorizing.
Yeah, but obviously there are certain experiences you prefer that you wouldn't say that experience is pleasure. You say it causes pleasure, right?
I'm not sure. I agree with that. No.
Do you think eating ice cream causes pleasure, or do you think it is pleasure?
Oh yeah, eating ice cream causes pleasure. Yeah, but the emotion.
Is it pleasure?
I'm referring to mental states. I'm not referring to things that cause pleasure. But no, yeah, of
would
course
you say that,
it's
like,
not pleasure
well,
itself.
obviously, would you say happy memories are pleasure, or would you say they cause pleasure?
They cause pleasure.
Okay, but they're a mental state, right?
Yeah, but they're not preferable ones unless they are pleasure
preferable.
itself. Pleasure is the under the definition I gave you, that pleasure is the preferable emotional state.
Are happy memories preferable?
In the sense, yeah, well, but not everything that is preferable is pleasure. Pleasure is the preferable
I agree.
emotional
That's my
state.
point. Yeah, you define pleasure.
No, I have no problem with this, and we have no contention. Again, pleasure is preferable emotional states.
Sorry, by emotional state you mean what exactly?
I mean, it's a decent question. I want to say mental states.
Yeah, but that would include
then I would have
happy
to say
memory.
but then I would have to say non-instrumental mental states.
Non-instrumental?
Yep.
So ones that, by non-instrumental you mean what exactly? Like I'm familiar with the instrumental terminal distinction. I'm just not familiar with how you're using it in this context.
Yeah, I'm saying mental states that I would prefer over other mental states, even if if they had no causal value, right? They cause nothing else in the world, I would still choose them. That's what a
Even if they cause
non-instrumental.
nothing else in the world, you would still choose them?
Yep.
So, do I experience pleasure, or does just you experience pleasure?
I would hope but what constitutes pleasure? Like, as in what things?
But you don't
are
experience
pleasurable
those,
for you?
right? So, like, if you were dead, would I still experience pleasure?
I'd imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, but it wouldn't fit your definition of pleasure.
No, well, you're right. I did blunder in the way I defined that because obviously.
Oh, a blunder! Oh, shucks! A blunder! A chess blunder! Take back that move! Go ahead.
Thanks, man. When I say that, I say pleasure are preferable mental states, not mental states I prefer. You got me on this? Have fun.
Have fun? What? Jesus. Look, all I'm saying is just that we have reason to believe on realism that utilitarianism is true. For a couple of reasons. So one of the reasons is that it follows one of the reasons is it follows a law-like format, right? So that's the reason why we'd expect particularism to be less likely than utilitarianism on moral realism.
Because the thing is, the premise of this debate, which we just agreed on a few minutes ago, was that we're going to assume, dude, we're assuming. I would if I could. I truly would. I truly love nothing more than a good debate.
Just say a combination of two. Just say some words. Just say the position.
But I'm an anti-realist prescriptionist.
Look, so when we have a position, it might be the case that my position is fucking answer the question, please.
I'm an anti-realist prescriptionist, but the issue is we've accepted that that moral realism is true. So my true position isn't relevant because I'm an anti-realist.
Just say it. Doesn't matter if it's relevant. Fucking say it. If it's not relevant, it's fine.
I'm an anti-realist prescriptionist. I'm an anti-realist prescriptionist. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you. So why do you think that on realism that's something we'd expect? Obviously the answer is no. Right?
What do you mean on realism?
On realism, do we expect this? If realism was true, we expect that. In the counterfactual world, right? Counterfactual or subjunctive position, right? Or do you believe that your position is true? That anti-realism is true? That any form of anti-realism is true? The answer is no.
If we accept that realism is true, we would have no reason to accept that anti-realism is true. Yes.
What? No, that's not true. Look, so just because realism is true doesn't mean we don't have reason why other things can be true. Even if we accept that realism is true, we still have reasons to count against.
Well, okay, yeah.
We just say overall it counts in favor.
If we had access to truths, we would have no reason. But yeah, it's possible for you to be deceived and have reasons to believe things that are false. Yeah, I agree with this, of course.
Okay. So sometimes we have reasons to believe things that aren't true. So I don't know why you.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you have some reason to believe the retarded things you believe, right?
Name one?
Name
one retarded thing I believe.
Utilitarianism is true.
Yeah, why is it retarded?
Because I have no reason to accept it. That's the whole premise of this debate.
And by reason, you mean preference?
I have no reason. It depends, because you've told me that you've come here and told me that if I accept
that was a yes or no question. Oh my god! Yes or no? Is that what you mean by reason?
I'm not. I don't like theater, dude. My friends are here. You've told me that if I accept moral realism, I have reason to believe. This dude just
talks. I'll ask like these
questions.
simple questions.
That utilitarianism is true.
So you're saying that I have reason to believe that utilitarianism is true under this condition? Just fucking answer it. Yes or no question.
You told me that if moral realism is true, I have reason to believe utilitarianism is true. You've not met the burden.
Do you think that isn't a yes or no question?
Restate the question if you need me to answer it.
Dog, please.
I hate theater, dude. I hate theater. I'm bored.
Don't dodge the question. If you're gonna forget it in 30 seconds. Oh my god.
Look, I don't want to get promise locked. I want to know what the question is word for word. You know what I mean?
God. look up. So I'm trying to figure things out, right? I'm trying to figure out why you think that my view, utilitarianism, is retarded. And you said that you think it's retarded because you see no reason for you to accept it. Now I'm asking, by reason, is all you mean just you don't like it, right? By I don't have a reason to accept it, you just mean I don't like it?
Okay, so I think there are two standards for
Yes or no,
accepting
please?
a moral position. I think there are no. The answer is no. The answer is no. And the complexity is, I think there are two reasons to accept a moral position. One, it is intuitive, or two, it reflects a moral fact. And I've given you both opportunities to, and it doesn't even have to be intuitive to me. I would accept intuitive to the audience and a audience vote. I will give you every chance in the world to win this debate. Why?
That's
because
not what
here.
That's just going to be ad populum. I wouldn't make that argument. That would be a shit argument.
No, genuinely, I'll give you any
like
win condition you want, other than a concession.
Super weak piece of evidence to say this random Discord poll says that most people agree with utilitarianism.
So if we're not going to, okay, so if we're not going to go within,
it's also going to be skewed because there are people here who are just going to like fucking agree with me no matter what, right? Like, so it's not a fucking,
yeah, you have friends here. I have enemies here. I gave it to you.
I just think it's a stupid poll. Right? I think that's a silly argument. Instead of making arguments that most people would agree with me, I'm going to make the argument for why I think it tracks more with the evidence on realism, right? Which is the conversation we were just having. Right?
This is fantastic, Sinthe. I'm telling you right now.
Can I finish my sentence?
You talk so much.
Look, you talk so much.
You're right. You're right.
None of them answers questions. It's okay. I forgive you. I forgive you. So look, I'm telling you that I think that on realism, utilitarianism is more likely to be true. The reasons I'm giving you for that are things like, for example, on realism, it's more expected than the alternatives being things like, for example, particularism, right? And so the reason why I think that particularism is something that's not expected is just because obviously we expect law-like structures to things on realism, right? If it's real, we expect it to act law-like because all the other real domains do. Now, we could go in and we can check against other systems. So on deontology, obviously, it's a system that's far less parsimonious than utilitarianism on average. More parsimonious forms of deontology are things that are going to be far less tracking with their intuitions, but be equally as parsimonious as utilitarianism. Other systems are just like you're going to have like obvious reductios that make them unintuitive, and they're not going to have any kind of theoretical virtues that bring them out above utilitarianism for some other consideration like parsimony.
Okay, so obviously, right, you've created an interesting burden for me, which I think is fun. I love it, in which I have to make the case that some moral realist theory is preferable to utilitarianism. Because it's possible, because I could go, oh, moral realism is true. I don't know what moral realism is true, but I know utilitarianism doesn't have positive reasons, right? And that's probably the strongest case I'll make. So that's what I'm going to go for. I was thinking divine command, but I've changed my mind.
Obviously, divine command theory is going to fail because that's going to posit the existence of a god.
Yeah, well, if you want to spend the whole,
maybe you take some different.
If you want to ask Glock to give us another 30 minutes, I'll go.
Okay.
We can do Judaism is true.
No, you guys aren't allowed. No.
Okay, terrific. So in the absence of being able to do another 30 minutes on Judaism is true, and I won't do divine command.
You can do Judaism is true if you want. Just do it now.
No, but it takes more than 30 minutes I lost against Pluto because I didn't have enough time on Judaism is true, so I don't. Okay. And I think you're smarter than Pluto, in my honest opinion. So I don't want to suck dick and cock, but okay. So in the absence of that, then I would need a reason to believe that, because if I were to accept moral facts and be ambiguous on what those moral facts are, I have moral preferences, and I seem to have a moral preference against suffering, and I seem to have a moral preference against a bunch of things like injustice. Do you have a thing that distinguishes those two things?
Yeah, of course. Right. So the reason why we shouldn't trust your preferences when we're trying to track what's true in the realist domain is because you obviously have motivations and reasons for those preferences that are going to bias you against the moral truth. What we should instead look for is not like, what do we prefer the most, right? I mean, I'm a little bit biased here. What I prefer the most is going to be utilitarianism. But we shouldn't look for what we prefer the most, but instead we should introspect, think to ourselves, what kind of things are more likely to be true? Now, obviously, you introspect and you ask yourself, how does pleasure feel, how does suffering feel? Feels pretty good or bad. Feels like that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. When we say good or bad, it feels like that's at least kind of that thing, right? So obviously, it would be really strange to have a moral theory where pleasure wasn't good and suffering wasn't bad, right?
We choose this over what? X over Y.
Choose seems to kick the can on the road. What do you mean by choose? It's just not clear to me what that's supposed to mean.
I would be motivated.
That's
to
kicking the
make
can again.
Is
Look, I don't know
most,
what you mean by motivated to, right? Do you just mean like you like it? What do you mean by like it?
yeah. No, like is what I mean.
And by like it,
Oh,
you
what
just mean prefer
I
it.
like.
Right? Look,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
even sure
yeah,
you have a
I
position.
agree. Well, for one, right, every definition is circular in meaning, right? Eventually, but I know that's not what you're saying.
True.
I know that's not what you're saying. No,
That's also not true.
Oh, sure. Give me a word that doesn't refer to another word that doesn't refer to another word.
Semantic primes. All of them.
Can-
They're not so, unless you think that they're circularly defined by being defined by themselves. I don't think that's what they are. I think
Give me
they're
an
defined. Look, I think the
example
semantic meaning of a.
prime.
I think the semantic meaning is something that we attempt to capture with definitions, right? Sometimes we'll say something like, "Here is the necessary and sufficient condition for fitting this," but those are just like those are like just best efforts. I don't think it's the case. That's how language works. I think that the underlying semantic meaning of a term is not in terms of its definition, and plenty of terms have no definitions but still have underlying semantic meanings, like semantic primes.
Well, wait. I actually have no objection against this if what you're saying is that
But it's kind of tangential.
refers to if what you're saying is that language refers to concepts, then I agree.
Yep. Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
I think that's true. I'm not sure that's quite
Fantastic.
what I was saying, but that's true.
I always love agreeing.
Generally.
And yeah, so if you're claiming that language refers to concepts, I have no objection to this. But
yeah,
you're asking me to try to define what it means to prefer something.
Yeah, just in a way that's like not just like an obvious synonym that's kicking the can down the road. Like I don't like it's not clear to me how.
Again, what I told you, it's to choose it in a situation where there are no other variables, as in act in
maybe this will figure it out. Could somebody have no ability to make choices but still have experiences?
I'd imagine so.
That's a good question, but it's over. Just give
us five.
No.
I mean, I'm not in a rush.
The debate hasn't been settled. The debate hasn't been settled.
It won't get settled, but I'll give you like, okay, fine, 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Is there somewhere you wanted to go with those last 5 minutes, or do you want to just keep going where I was going to go?
Well, I've already told you where I stand. You know what your burden.
Just keep going then.
Convince me.
No, I don't think the burden is to convince you personally. I think the burden is just to show that, like, on either of these views, utilitarianism is true, right? Now, on anti-realism, it's obviously true because I prefer it, and that's all I mean. That's what I mean under an anti-realist meta-ethic. And all I mean under the realist meta-ethic is going to be something where utilitarianism is still most expected. So if realism or non-realism, then utilitarianism. So I mean, the reasons I gave you for why on realism utilitarianism are the ones that I think are less trivial, and by trivial I mean like less fucking like pointless to mention.
What are these reasons?
The reasons are things like the parsimony concerns, the fact that like it tracks better with intuitions compared to things that are equivalent in parsimony. Like you want to.
You've not made the. Okay, so I'll just quickly respond to this.
I
have to shift burden back to you if I want to win the debate, right? So I'll just say one. In terms of parsimony, super positive claim. I'd have to just know what you mean by that. And then in terms of intuition, you'd have to make, as in what makes it more parsimonious. I'd need you to justify that.
I mean that it's a better explanation of the data.
Yeah, and then I would again need you to justify that. It's a simpler
explanation of the data, and all I mean by that is causes less moving parts. And if you don't get the concept, I don't know, we can go over theories of parsimony.
I would love to. I'll just respond to the second part, as in when you say it's intuitive, I need a reason. Because by the way, if we do not have a fundamental distinction between our moral preference for justice and our moral preference for utility, there is no reason on earth to accept utilitarianism is true. This parsimony case would be a reason, by the way. But you do have to make it
simpler. Okay, you agree that the utilitarianism being simpler than, say, for example, most threshold deontologist views, most like, for example, Rossian deontology, you agree, like a hedonic utilitarian view would be simpler than that.
Define simpler.
I mean, pauses less moving parts.
As in makes less ontological commitments?
Sure, we'll go with that. On realism, it would make less ontological commitments.
Say it would make less ontological commitments than some deontological theories, yes. So then some.
Okay, it makes either less than or equal to, right?
Then some.
Then all. Either less than or equal to.
Do you think
there's none that make zero. And all utilitarian has to make is the claim that valence ought to be maximized. And that's officially utilitarian.
Valence.
There's only one ontological commitment, which is valence.
One turtle is the only moral good. You'd agree that that's equal to the utilitarianism claim in ontological.
Equally? Yeah, that'd be equally as parsimonious, sure.
Sure. So, as in ontologically,
turtle, sure. Now.
I don't want to agree to the term parsimonious, but ontologically dense, I agree.
Okay, we can do whatever term you want to use for that. So
Mhm.
if we agree that case is going to be just equal, then we agree the utilitarian is equal to or less than all others, equal to in terms of complexity. It's going to win
In
out on the
terms of
parsimony concern.
entity, yeah.
And if you want to take a look at alternatives, right, utilitarianism is the most intuitive in particular cases. So we can go through particular cases and see that no system that doesn't fail on either the parsimony account or alternatively is getting beat out on the law-likeness account. Both of those are going to be issues for any kind of like non-utilitarian.
Well, this is
But
what
a
you wanna-
utilitarian, but a utilitarian is going to win out on intuitiveness on theories that are equal on those grounds. So like the turtle case you
Okay,
gave,
yeah,
obviously it tracks more with
So-
intuitions about particular cases.
You're making the like truly. I love kindness. Like Liam, he's watching me right now with both eyes. Your case is that in comparison to all ontologically equally dense theories, that utilitarianism is equally intuitive.
No, it's more intuitive.
More intuitive. Fantastic. Okay. So if I were to take on some, wait, actually, even easier. Define valences.
Yeah, so you know how like pleasure feels good, suffering feels bad, and the difference.
As
between
in,
those two
pleasure
feelings?
is defined as in preferableness.
I define it as sensibly. Like that thing that gets caused every time that like you getting hit with a hammer happens, that's suffering. That thing that gets caused every time that like you eat food that tastes really good, that's pleasure. Most people have a concept of these things. I don't think I can communicate them to you because I think that most qualia is very primitive.
It's really annoying. I don't want to give you any more gifts, but the only way I know how to cash out what you're saying is things I prefer and things I don't prefer.
We can
And
imagine
things I'm
somebody
anti.
having choices. We can imagine somebody having no choices, right? Having no capacity for choices, and thus they wouldn't have any
I
for
truly,
your idea of preferences. But they would still be the kind of person who could have these good or bad experiences that we're calling pleasure and suffering.
No, because if I gave them the faculties for choice, it could be contingently on the ability to choose, they would. And then that problem is solved.
You could give them the faculties for choice. Yeah, but they wouldn't
So-
have choice.
so
They wouldn't have the
without-
ability to
no.
have preferences.
No, but
I
it would
agree that
be-
most people are motivated towards valence.
It would be emotional states that would cause an individual that can choose to choose against them would be pain. And
No, I can
individuals
imagine
that
somebody who seeks out suffering and somebody who avoids pleasure because they're like cognitively impaired or something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
this is
Just
closing
check.
statements now.
Okay.
Closing
This
statements.
is so brutal because truly, Sinthe, the debate isn't over. Like, if I win, brutal because the debate's not over. If I lose, even worse. But yeah, I guess we can do closing statements. Do you want to go first? Do you want to go second?
I thought you were doing your closing statement.
No, I was being kind. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to do it now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's okay. You can go.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we've come into this debate with the question that utilitarianism, the claims a utilitarian makes is true. And now we're in this brutal, because the time ended early, situation in which utilitarianism promises me a ontological commitment. And I've agreed, and Sinthe was going to say this in their conclusion, I've agreed to accept the ontological commitments of moral realism, right? But if I have had no convincing case to distinguish between any moral realism case, then Sinthe has lost this debate, dude. Like, I it's brutal because the debate didn't even happen. But yes, Sinthe did not make the case to distinguish between moral realist cases. Sinthe did not make the case that utilitarianism is more intuitive than every other case. And I said this in my opening statement. But if you do not properly distinguish between our moral preference for justice and our moral preference for pleasure, then you cannot believe that utilitarianism is true. And Sinthe has since said to me a truly interesting thing that I'll think about for a while about what does it mean for a thing to be pleasure and suffering? And when I introspect, it does seem to be what I would choose. And if that were the case, then still we do not have a distinction between justice and utility defined as pleasure. And so Sinthe has lost the debate. And I don't even want to stunt because I truly respect Sinthe so much, and the debate didn't finish. But you can have your closing statement now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be presumptuous. I've got some guesses about the way it'll be judged. I know. Reg has one good point, right? It was really short. Like, it was like crazy short. It was like not even 45 minutes. So that's true. But no, to round back up and to remind the arguments, it's just that utilitarianism is more intuitive than other alternatives that are equally as parsimonious and equally as law-like. Alternatives that are obviously not going to be equally as law-like or equally as parsimonious end up being things that are as intuitive and more intuitive in some cases. But we wouldn't expect that intuition is going to be that strong. We just expect it has some degree to which it's evidence. It's not like strong evidence or anything. So we can take a look at like, for example, particularism. That's not going to be as law-like, so that's going to be less expected on realism. So the alternatives of like a really complicated threshold deontology that has a tremendous number of rules, or even like a simpler one like Rossian threshold deontology, still end up being ones that are just going to fail on parsimony considerations compared to utilitarianism. ones that do end up being about as I say parsimonious. I actually just mean simple because obviously parsimony's got two conditions. But the ones that end up being equally as simple as utilitarianism are things like, for example, like the NAP, right? So like the view that the morally good action is defined the morally good action is going to be the one that tracks with what does or doesn't violate somebody else's consent, right? Like what is the initiation of violence. Now, that might not necessarily be as parsimonious as utilitarianism, but granting it is, obviously it's going to be way less intuitive because we have these obvious counterintuitive cases like stealing opinions of the world. Counterintuitive cases for utilitarians end up being things like the mere addition paradox, which are like kind of not that all too unintuitive, end up kind of being obviously true if you're a generalist. The principles you need for that are just kind of like anybody who's read the humor paper back, I think it's the 07 humor paper, is familiar with the arguments in favor of mere addition, and it kind of just make it obviously correct. The older Parfit arguments in favor of it are also kind of clear. So those arguments against utilitarianism end up just being things that are like mildly unintuitive, but if you think about it for a bit, they end up becoming kind of intuitive, or they're like the super rare case of things that are kind of counterintuitive, but to resolve them, you'd have to have this like very, very complicated network of like ideas about what it means for an action to be sadistic and why that would at all be the kind of thing that tracks well onto our tracks into the moral facts as opposed to just tracking to our intuitions about them because there's like an evolutionary advantage. So like all the arguments there, all the cases where we see like utilitarianism being unintuitive are things that are easily accounted for with an Evo debunking argument, and the arguments in favor of utilitarianism can't be accounted for like this.
Could I ask you a question in your closing statement, which I know is against the rules in general?
Yeah, if you want to, sure.
Thank you so much. I made the case before, and I said it in my closing statement, but I made the claim that short of a distinction between justice and our preference for suffering and a preference for happiness, a pleasure, and our preference against suffering, that you can't win this debate. I'll give you a second opportunity to make this distinction. Are you not going to give it a go?
Between what two things?
Our moral preference, our intuitive moral preference for justice, and our intuitive preference against suffering and for pleasure.
Because we can experience the goodness of suffering in a way that isn't going to be morally relevant or morally dependent, and the other one has this Evo debunking argument against it. Didn't really get into, but that's going to be one other case against it. The argument I made in the course of the debate, which is like the only one that people should be judging on, is just going to be or I guess like maybe if you want to judge closing statements or something, but the only argument I made there was just it's the case that we have a first-hand experience of the goodness and badness of pleasure and suffering. We don't need to rely on moral intuitions to figure out that it's good and bad.
And by good and bad here, you mean preferable and unpreferable, or you mean something else?
I mean in the realist sense.
That it relates to moral.
No, it's over.
Greg really clawed.
It's over. I don't.
Trying to claw his way out of the jaws of defeat. Right?
All the judges just go to the judge channel if there is one.
I love all the judges more than Reg loves the judges, with the record state.
I'm truly sure of this. I believe this. All I love is God and my friend Liam, who's still wanting something funny to happen.
Poor Liam.
No, yeah, for real.
We sure did clear up all of utilitarianism in that 45-minute debate.
No, yeah, this hurt my feelings, Sinthe. I thought you would do a better job.
Shut the fuck up, bitch.
No, but I don't even think your case is terrible at all. I just think you would have been fiercer. You know, you weren't.
I thought I would have been like more yelly. I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny to just sort of let you go.
Because yeah, this wasn't your best. This wasn't your best.
This was a bang. I don't know what you're talking about. I clapped your cheeks up.
You think you were best?
I would actually be surprised if the judges came back saying that's otherwise, but I feel scared to talk
This is so interesting because I truly feel like you didn't. Your closing statement was nice if any of the things in your closing were points of contention of the debate. You were like, oh, it's more intuitive, but we didn't spend the whole debate arguing about intuitiveness. So why would I believe what you say? Like, truly, I don't even know.
We'd believe it for any reason we believe any kind of theory. So we just look at the evidence. So what's more expected on this case than the alternative? Duke says that hello, I'm a judge, but you've got to put me in the judge channel with the rules. Somebody should get Duke up here so that Duke can explain why he thinks that I'm wrong.
Well, for one, I have a lot of enemies in this server, but yeah, this is a fellow with infinite zest.
I only have like two.
A fellow with infinite zest is literally right. There was none of the point of contentions got settled, and in the absence of that, you have the ontological commitment.
I have the ontological commitment?
No, you're right, because I accepted any ontological commitment as long as it was equally ontologically dense. I've changed my mind already.
That's okay.
But the claims that utilitarians make are true is not true.
I mean, both it's the case that I prefer utilitarianism, and it's the
case I'm
I'm
sure you'd prefer Fortnite Bulls.
I do, yeah. That's all true as well.